We're here today to talk about Die Hard Nakatomi Plaza. It's a first-person shooter powered by the Littek engine, and as you can probably tell from its name, it's based on the popular 1988 action movie starring Bruce Willis, Die Hard. For the most part, you do feel like John McClane walking around Nakatomi Plaza shooting bad guys, but it suffers from its fair share of problems, namely pretty bad graphics, some significant AI issues, and the control scheme is kind of awkward. Just like the movie, you play the role of John McClane. He's a NYPD detective who flies back to LA to kind of make up with his estranged wife, Holly. He meets her at her company's Christmas party, which is being held in this massive 40-story skyscraper called Nakatomi Plaza. It's in the middle of Century City. When these terrorists take over the building, they take everyone hostage, they cut the communication lines from the outside world, and they're after about $640 million in negotiable bearer bonds. So, all the characters in the movies are in this game. Argyle, the limo driver, you, John McClane, Holly, his wife, all the terrorists, including Hans Gruber, and then, of course, Sergeant Al Powell. For the most part, the voices in the game are pretty bad. I hate to say it, but they're pretty bad. The terrorists sound like schoolyard impersonations of Hans and Franz from Saturday Night Live, and like Joe Takagi sounds like some white dude trying to speak with an Asian accent. Having said that, however, the voices for John McClane, Gruber, and Sergeant Powell are pretty well done. They're pretty much as good as you're going to get without actually having to hire Bruce Willis and then other actors.
It's useless to you. There are 7 safeguards on our vault, and the code key is only one of them. You'll never get it open.
Then there's no reason not to tell it to us.
There are some inconsistencies between the plot of the game, Nakatomi Plaza, and the plot of the movie. First and foremost, the movie was about 2 hours and 11 minutes long, whereas it'll take you about 10 to 15 hours to finish this game. So to flesh this game out even further, to stretch that 2 hours into 10-15 hours, the designers obviously had to add more levels and more characters. Those levels include scenes that were never shown in the movie and probably should have been kept that way. So this actually messes with the plot of the movie, this movie that we've all come to know and love. And you'll find some of these inconsistencies playing the game. For instance, anyone who's seen the movie knows that there are about a dozen terrorists tops who've taken over Nakatomi Plaza. But in the game, there's about 100. Now, sure, you can't have just 12 guys because you'll mow right through them in an instant. But when McClane is talking to Powell, he'll actually say things like, you know, I just killed 2 of them and there's about 6 left, even though, you know, in that level you've killed 20 or 30 guys. So inconsistencies like that kind of break that suspension of disbelief while playing the game. So if you strip the game away from its die-hard shell, you're left with this really mediocre at best first-person shooter. It moves real slow. There's an always run option, but it drains your stamina. Now this stamina is interesting because there's 3 things that you have to keep track of while playing the game. One is stamina, one is health, obviously, and one is morale. Stamina is used for, like I said, running and jumping, and it drains after you do any of those too much. And morale affects how enemies and hostages supposedly interact with you, but in practice, it really has no use in the game at all. Throughout the majority of the game, you'll have either the Beretta M92F, which is McClane's standard issue NYPD gun, or the MP5 that he gets from the terrorist. 2 primary weapons. The MP5 is wildly inaccurate and very frustrating to use. The game also has 3 other weapons that you can pick up throughout later levels. They are the Steyr AUG, the M60 machine gun, and a Colt M4A1. The problem is that there's hardly any ammo for any of those 3 weapons lying around. So you'll be frustrated that you can't use them and you'll have to revert back to your MP5. One of the biggest problems of the game is the level of AI. Specifically, the amount of intelligence that these enemies exhibit is pretty substandard. For the most part, they'll just stand in front of you point blank while you spray them with ammo. Occasionally, you'll see someone shooting from around a corner or ducking underneath a table or solid object, but those instances are pretty infrequent. As I mentioned before, the game is powered by the Littek engine, which in the past has led to some mixed results. On the one hand, No One Lives Forever and games like Alien vs. Predator 2 have looked fantastic, but there's been a flurry of other first-person shooters that haven't looked so great, and unfortunately, Die Hard Nakatomi Plaza falls into that latter category. For instance, most of the enemies that you'll run into, in fact all the enemies that you run into, are made up of real low poly count. The levels themselves do look a lot like the scenes in Die Hard the movie, but they have a very blocky look to them, and they're skinned with textures that are real low res and get very blurry if you look at them up close. Unfortunately for first-person shooter fans, Die Hard can't be recommended. It's slow, it's awkward, it's almost frustrating. For fans of Die Hard the movie, there might be some novelty in there in seeing, and being John McClane and seeing Hans and interacting with all the terrorists and the hostages, but that novelty will probably wear thin before you actually finish the game. And since there's no multiplayer at all, there's absolutely no reason to go back and play it again. For what it's worth, the game is selling for $30, which is cheaper than most PC games, but aside from a select few die-hard fans, this game can be recommended.